Hello, Internet. Good morning, and welcome to Compositing 101 with Aaron Nace here on Creative Live. I am Russ Andes, this is Lorraine Lobdell, and we will be your host for today. We're very excited to be bringing you this presentation, and I can't wait to get it started. We are going to do about 5 minutes of pre-show here, so let us know in the chat rooms if you can see us and hear us as we test our audio and video and make sure that you can see all of the wonderful goodness that Aaron has to bring. Lorraine, how you doing today?
I am doing absolutely fabulous. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been to Creative Live, and every time I come here, it's so exciting because, first of all, the energy and the creativity in this place is always phenomenal, but this time is actually extra special because we have some phenomenal sets here, and one of them is kind of top secret, and we're not going to show you or say anything about it, except what I'm saying right now, until tomorrow. So I'm really excited, so definitely you guys are in for a treat.
Agreed. I mean, you can see what's going on behind us, and you're going to see the amazing stuff that is to come. We also have some amazingly wonderful people here in the audience, and we have people at home, so let's go ahead and meet them.
All right, cool.
Let's start right here. We're going to have you introduce yourself, say your name and where you're joining us from, and how people can find you.
My name is Gabriel. I'm from Centralia, Washington. You can find me on Twitter at GBQuest.
My name is Miguel Quiles, and you can find me on Twitter actually at MQ Images, and my website is miguelquiles.com.
Hi, I'm Catherine Gooding from Seattle. You can find me at catherinegooding.com. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Alec, and you can find me on Twitter at AlecRW94.
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm out of Issaquah, Washington. You can find me at BaileyandBanjo.com and Twitter handle BaileyandBanjo.
Hi, I'm Todd Hobart. You can find me at about.me/Todd Hobart or on Twitter at thobart1.
That's fantastic. We're so excited to have you all here. We're running a little bit short today, so we'll get to know you more in the next couple of days. How about people online, Lorraine? Where are they joining us from?
It is always such a treat to join in the chat rooms at Creative Live because we have an amazing global audience. Right now we have Southern Belle is joining in from Germany. Welcome. And we have Tangeline Design from Cedar Rapids right here in the United States. And Sam Cox from Loveland, Colorado is joining us, as well as quite a few people. Let's see. We have Iowa, who is Liz Stowe, and Simplicity is joining in from Paris, France. So welcome all of you.
Fantastic. So excited to have the worldwide audience that we always have here on Creative Live. For those of you who are new to Creative Live or need a little refresher on how it works, I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction here as it's time to get started. We will teach you how to watch today's class, how to ask questions in chat, and then how to purchase these course videos if you want to. If you want to watch Creative Live, all you need to do is go to creativelive.com/live. You can watch it there on your iPad, iPhone, Android device, anywhere. Just go directly to creativelive.com/live. On that page, you will see that there's a little button up at the top, and this button is on all of our web pages, and this is where you can select which course to watch. We have 2 different courses going on right now, so you can pick which one by selecting that button. Lower on the page, you can also see a big green Buy button. This is where you can buy this course if you want to own it and be able to refer back to it in the future when you're doing your own composites. You can also join in on the worldwide chat room by clicking that Chat Live button. This will open up a new window which will have 3 different chat rooms in it. This is where you can interact with all of your fellow students around the world and ask questions of them and for Aaron. We have 3 chat rooms as mentioned. First one, Creative Live. This is for your on-topic discussion. This is to talk about whatever Aaron is talking about, ask for clarification, or to just discuss the applications with your fellow students. The next chat room is going to be Creative Cues. Creative Cues is where you can ask questions for Aaron. Lorraine and I will be collecting all those questions along with the folks in the chat room there, and we will ask those as we get a chance. Be sure to preface those with a cue and tell us where you're joining us from because we love to give you a good shout out when we do. Creative Lounge is where you can have all of your off-topic discussion. This is where you can talk about anything you want. Keep it nice and friendly, obviously, and positive and supportive, but this is where you can have your off-topic joking conversation. Gotta love those loungers. You can also ask questions via social media. So if you want to ask questions on Facebook, go to facebook.com/creativelive. Give us a like while you're there if you haven't already. And you can ask on Twitter. Just use the hashtag ErinLive, and our wonderful behind-the-scenes folks will be pulling those and passing them on to Lorraine and I. Now, Compositing 101 with Aaron Nace is the course that we're about to start here. This course costs $149. The way Creative Live works is that you can watch it live for free, which many of you are doing right now, and we love it when you do. If this is something that you find to be valuable and something that you would like to refer back to later and be able to use in your own work to, as you improve and figure out how you want to use it, you can purchase the course videos for only $149. We do offer a very special discount before the end of the workshop. We offer them for only $99 if you buy by the end of the workshop, which is Saturday, June 1st. And we offer that for $99. When you go to the course page for Compositing 101, you will see a number of different things. On the left-hand side, there is an enroll and a purchase button. This is where you can enroll in the course to get access to some additional behind-the-scenes materials and get reminders of the course just in case you forget that it's going to start. You can also buy the course there if you haven't bought it just directly below on the Live Now page. There will also be bonus materials here, which we'll talk about later. And this is where you'll find the course videos when we get them up. We usually are able to put the course videos up that we finish it, which is amazing to me. Our editors are amazing and super speedy. So once those course videos are up, you can download them in low-res or HD versions, stream them directly from our website without needing to download. Continue. Love to give stuff away to you people who are at home. We do that via two ways. One, you can enter on Facebook. We have a quote contest where all you need to do is listen for a great tip, trick, or just funny thing that Aaron says. I can imagine that he will say one or two funny things throughout the 3 days. And enter in that big green button that says the Aaron Contest. You can enter once per hour on Facebook. You can enter as many times as you want on Twitter. On Twitter, just make sure to include @AKNacer and the link for the course, which is the one you see on the screen. You can also get that in the chat room. That is the link to the course page. That's how we search and find it. So this is Compositing 101 with Aaron Nace, and I think that you've heard enough from me, so we're going to bring on the man himself. Aaron has been a photographer for many years. In 2011, he started Flern.com, which is not only an amazing resource for Photoshop and other tutorials, but is also a wonderful euphemism which you can use, and just when you get angry at your Photoshop, you can just say, "Ah, Flern.com." So let's bring on the man himself, Aaron Nace. Come on in.
Right on. Thanks, Alex.
Welcome.
Right on.
So good to have you here. Are you excited?
Awesome. This is going to be an amazing 3 days. I'm so excited.
I know. It's been crazy being able to talk with Aaron over the past couple of days as we are planning all this out. And today is going to be crazy. Tomorrow is going to be crazy. I can't wait.
Yeah.
So how do you feel?
I feel great. It's 3 days of like nonstop excitement, and you guys are going to be great. Like compositing after these 3 days, like basically the whole goal is to get everyone who's like, I don't know what to do with compositing. It kind of scares me. This is not something I feel comfortable with. By the end of these 3 days, you guys are going to be like, I got this. It's mine. I own it.
Good. Well, I'm going to get out of your way and let you start teaching. So, Aaron.
Right on.
Enjoy.
Thanks, Russ.
Oh, and nope, you don't need this.
I don't need that. I'm good. Right on. Guys, welcome to Compositing 101. My name is Aaron Nace. You can find me on Twitter @AKNacer. Today, we're going to talk about our first set, but before we get into what we're doing here, we want to talk about the 3 days and just what is compositing and how can you guys use it. Well, the 3 days, what we're going to be doing is actually 2 different photo shoots, and a lot of what people think about when they think about compositing is Photoshop, and that's totally true. But what I want to bring to you guys throughout these 3 days is the fact that you don't have to be a Photoshop expert to be able to do composites well. A lot of it is done in the camera during the photo shoots, so that's why we're going to be spending 2 entire days just doing the photo shoot. So day 1, which is today, we're going to be doing a photo shoot all day. I'm barely going to be touching a computer. Tomorrow, we've got a really amazing set built for you guys. It's going to be a cool surprise, and we're going to be spending almost the entire day as well on set with photography. And I'm going to take you guys step through step by basically breaking down everything you need to know, everything you need to like keep in mind while doing a composite image, so that when you do transition into Photoshop, it's really pretty easy. You don't have a lot to think about, you don't have a lot to do. I'm going to take you through it and make it really, really simple for you. So during these 2 days of shooting, we're going to be covering 2 different types of compositing. And compositing, they don't really name the different types of compositing, so I thought of some names myself. We're going to be doing a compositing type called element compositing and a type called frame compositing. And today we're going to be doing element compositing. And basically what it means is we're going to be photographing different elements. You probably see behind me here, we have our first set today, and we're going to be talking about the concept and everything in general. But we're going to be photographing this, and then we're going to be photographing some other elements. It's actually going to be an amazing giant pool right here filled with milk in just a little bit. You're going to see it's going to blow your mind. It's going to blow my mind too, because we haven't done it yet, so I'm really excited to see it. So these are the couple different elements that we're going to be photographing, and then in Photoshop we're going to put these elements together. So this is the first type of compositing. Now tomorrow we're going to be doing the compositing that's called frame compositing, and basically almost everything is going to be in the same place. The camera's going to stay, lighting's going to stay, and we're just going to take a couple different frames that are actually going to be like there for you, so you can focus on like using this little part of the one image and one little part of another image and kind of sticking them all together to create the final image that you guys want. So you're probably wondering about this time why you might even want to composite. Well, that's a really good question. Compositing is all about, to me, it's all about those crazy, wonderful ideas that you had in the back of your head. Those like things of fantasies you wanted to see come to life. It's a way to bring those things to life. So compositing basically is a way to anything you can think of, you can make happen with compositing. And you guys have probably seen a lot of composites before. So much of commercial photography we see these days is compositing. You know, a person cut out of their background and put on a different background. There's some composites that are done really well and some composites that are not done as well. And our goal today is to get you guys, no matter what skill level you guys are, and this is, I really do mean this, you guys are going to be good at compositing at the end of these 3 days, because I'm going to show you guys what is important to do in camera so that the Photoshop work is very easy in the end. And that, in my opinion, is the biggest help when you're doing a composite, is making sure you can do everything you need to do in camera to make your job much easier in the end. So that's compositing, and we're basically going to be bringing you 2 amazing concepts over these 3 days. First day and second day are shooting. Third day is in Photoshop, and I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. Right on. Do you guys have any questions about compositing, or about why you might want to do this, or just why I'm wearing a cool graph paper shirt today?
I think we're good to jump right into it. Let's talk about the concept.
Jumping right into it. Perfect. Well, you guys can see behind me right here, we have our set designer built this amazing Big K Fruit Loopies, and we've got a big bowl of cereal here today too. So one of the reasons why we're going to be doing this shot in particular is based on our concept for today. And we've actually got a sketch of the concept that we're going to be bringing up right now. I wonder if we can see it. Might be, there we go. That's our sketch of the concept. And you can see I'm an amazing sketch artist. I did that myself, right? It's amazing. But this is the whole idea. You don't really have to be good at sketching. You don't have to be good at drawing. Well, that's why I take pictures, because I'm not good at either of those things. But everything that we're going to be doing today is based off a sketch. It's based off an original idea that we had, and this is the concept for today. So I want to walk you guys through our concept for today. We're going to talk about actually what we're going to be doing, because this might not be that clear. Maybe you're like, oh, I get it, but it might not be that clear. We're going to be talking about what we're going to be doing, how we're going to be pulling this off, some important things to think about when actually like coming up with your composite idea, and making that appropriate for your audience. So I'm just going to back up a little bit here. We're going to talk about this screen right now, and this is about as good as any of my sketches get. They really don't have to get any better than this. But what we're going to be doing today, it's really, really amazing. We're going to be creating this fantasy type image where we're going to have a young girl, very, very cool. Sarah Eve is going to be our subject today, and she's basically like hunched over a bowl of cereal that she's about to eat in the morning. And in our cereal bowl, we're going to have some like Fruit Loopies in there, which is really cool. But we're going to actually have a person inside of the cereal bowl. They'll be probably about that big in the final frame. And it's going to be amazing. There's basically just going to be a dude with his shirt off and an inner tube, maybe like a little bit of beer guts sticking out. And I want him like spitting milk out of his mouth too. So he's going to be like in the actual material. He's going to be looking at draw attention. Kaleo, who's the set builder, did we have like even a miniature letter how the guy got. There you go. So some of these elements are actually on set. Some of these elements you can see, like the cereal bowl.
Sorry, we need to stop. We're having technical difficulties.
No way. I'm okay with that.
Our live feed just went down. Stand by for about 30 seconds.
Stand by, everybody.
Welcome back, everybody. We apologize for that little technical glitch there. We've got everything all fixed, though, and we are ready to get started again. Aaron stopped. You are not going to miss anything. We'll have him back up a little bit, and we'll just get right back into it. Aaron.
Right on. Thanks, guys. So we were talking about our cereal bowl and the whole concept with it. So I'm going to talk you guys through the sketch and why it's so important to have a sketch when you're actually going to be starting to do a composite image or basically any concept like this. So let's talk about the sketch first. First of all, our subject, our audience would say she looks scared, apparently. We're worried. She's not supposed to. She's supposed to look excited, but I don't know how to draw eyebrows to look excited at a stick figure. So that's why I take pictures, because I'm apparently not very good at that. But she's going to be looking down into the cereal bowl where there's going to be a guy either like floating on his back or in like one of those like floaty donut tubes. And he's basically going to be like lounging out in this pool, which doesn't make any sense at all, but it's a fun image. It's something that's going to be a lot of fun, and you can't do this normally. You could not possibly do this image without a composite, unless you created like a miniature version of a human, like a model that had amazing detail. But I'm not going to do that, because we're just going to take pictures, and it's going to basically achieve the same effect, and that's through using compositing. So this is going to be our element compositing. So basically we've got our girl, we've got a bowl here that's going to be filled with some milk, and we're probably going to be putting some Fruit Loopies in here. These are not Fruit Loops, guys, for copyright reasons. There are no Fruit Loops used on this set. We're using Fruit Loopies, and they're going to be kind of like sprinkled around in there, and that's going to be our subject. So there are a lot of things that we kind of want to keep in mind when doing a composite like this. And we actually have a board of things to keep in mind. Now, during one of these photo shoots, usually we'll have something like a checklist that we actually do, like to keep in mind, like, okay, these are all the things that we're going to be doing. And there's a board right over here, and these are the elements of our composite. Now, this is specific for today, and basically we're going to make sure we focus on all these different points and kind of cross them off the list as they come across. So these are all things that you kind of have to keep in mind before starting the entire photo shoot. And you might be thinking, well, how do we come up with this list? And that's a really good question, and it all goes back to our sketch. So let's go back over to our sketch. Sorry, I'm kind of going back and forth here. Are you guys okay? No one's getting lost? Okay. So back to the sketch, and why the sketch is such an integral part of compositing our images. Really, the only thing you guys need to do when doing a composite is figure out what you want your final image to look like. And if you know exactly what your final image to look like, you can break it down into little pieces and then put them all back together. So these are, you're going to be creating these different elements, or like pieces of a puzzle that you're going to stick back together later. So let's just kind of break it down with the sketch. We can see we've got a person looking into a cereal bowl. They're holding a spoon. Maybe they got a glass of orange juice there. Is there any compositing needed there? No, not really, right? That's like, yeah, pretty easy. I could just photograph a person in a cereal bowl. So you've got that whole element. The next element you have is the actual like mini person inside of the cereal bowl. So can you do that like, you know, on the set, or would you have to composite that in afterwards? Yeah. Right, totally. You have to composite it in afterwards. So we know that the majority of this set, the majority of my sketch, I can do in one frame. The only thing that I really needed to worry about in the composite is this right here, what's actually inside of our cereal bowl. So what we can think of is like, okay, we got the majority of our set kind of like figured out with that part of it. Now we need to construct something that's going to be our cereal bowl. Now, the really cool thing about compositing is that scale doesn't really matter. Things can be large or small, and you can blow them up and make them large or small in Photoshop. So scale is really not that important. The only thing that's important are your lighting and your camera angles to make sure those match. So now that we know we just need to get a guy floating in a giant pool of white liquid, that's really our entire goal. How would we do that? Well, you can probably think of many ways to do it. And what we've got is we're actually bringing a pool, like a little kid's mini pool here, and filling it with what is going to look like milk. I have no idea what the actual mixture is. I'm a little scared for the guy who's going to get in it. I'm sure it's safe. But yeah, so that's the second part of the composite, is just figure out how to make a giant pool of white liquid and then put a person in it. So we've got those two elements, and once we photograph the main subject, then we can photograph the pool, and then we can put those together in Photoshop. And if there's anything else that we want to bring in as well, we can photograph those afterwards and put those in as well. So does that make sense? kind of like not too hard, right? It's like we got a really cool idea. Now we know exactly what we want it to look like, and we just kind of have to break down those individual pieces of the puzzle. So that's the whole idea behind element compositing. Is very important to have the sketch. If you don't have the sketch, you don't have. It's really interesting what you can figure out with a sketch, and even the sketch is this bad. I think it's important to see that like you can kind of figure out our focal length, right? Like this is probably not shot at 200 millimeters because the bowl is like pretty large in comparison to the subject. Subject's a little bit smaller, and they need to be kind of compressed. So we're going to be shooting this a little bit wide angle. Like, can you figure out a wide angle from a sketch? In this case, you can. I mean, not like exactly, but pretty close. The second thing you can kind of figure out is maybe your aperture. So let's say our point here, that we want this person who's going to be actually in the cereal bowl, they need to be in focus, right? If they're out of focus, you won't be able to see the detail. It's not really that important. But our girl who's behind needs to be in focus too, because she's also really important. So we're going to be using a depth of field that's a little bit more deep. So instead of shooting at like 1.4 or 2.0, now we're going to be shooting at like f11 or f13, so we can get that little bit wider depth of field. So even things like that you wouldn't think like a sketch could tell you your aperture, but like it totally can if you just kind of like think about a couple of those things. So, but if you get it like slightly wrong or you just make a miscalculation, it's usually not that big of a deal. As long as you get most of your elements pretty close, that's the important part of compositing. All right, perfect. Does anyone have any questions about compositing or what we're going to be doing today?
We did have a question come in just about your general process. Sam Cox from Loveland, Colorado is wondering whether you usually or always take time to sketch your ideas like this before shooting.
That's a really good question. Now, with a lot of types of photography, you don't really have to create a sketch. Like if you're just going to go, put a model in a pretty dress and go outside and take pictures in natural light, you don't really need sketches. Maybe you would use like references of like the lighting you'd want to use if you want to use a backlighting or things like that. When doing a composite, I always recommend using a sketch 100% of the time, and it's because some of the things can't really change. For instance, once I have my camera angle, once I know what I'm actually going to be photographing, I can't really change my camera angle. That's why during these next 2 days, my camera is going to be on a tripod for basically the entire shoot. It's going to change positions for each of the different elements, but you'll notice today we're going to have our subject, she's going to be sitting right here, and the camera is going to stay in the exact same place. The reason is, if I were to bring the camera down lower a little bit, then that completely changes my perspective on the cereal bowl, which means that would completely change the perspective on how we're going to shoot the pool in the end. So every little change that I make with my camera means a completely different change for every single one of the elements of the composite. So in order for those elements to stay consistent, we want to make sure as much as possible does stay consistent. So the lighting we don't change, the camera angles we don't change, we just photograph each of those elements and put them all together. And so having a sketch really does help that out. Not only that, but in this case, we built like all this and things like that were built. I'm based in Chicago and we're here in Seattle, and I had to tell our set designer, the production, everyone, like, how is this shot going to actually come together? And without the sketch, even though it's not really that nice of a sketch, it would have been a lot harder for people to understand what we're actually trying to achieve. And now, everyone who's going to be helping you out during the set, I mean, looking around this room, there are like 30 people in here who are going to help make this picture possible. And like, keep in mind, it's not just me. So this helps everyone kind of get on the same page and say, this is the end goal, this is what we're all working for, and we're going to make it happen. And hopefully it's going to look a little better than the sketch. So that's the end goal. Really good question. Very cool. So we can go ahead and get started with our actual shot. I'm going to talk about the lighting, and we're going to talk about lighting with compositing in general. Do we have any questions before I get into the lighting? Nope? No questions before I get into the lighting and everything? Okay, really cool. So the lighting for this shot and the lighting for compositing in general, if you guys are relatively new at compositing, which I'm guessing some of you are because this is Compositing 101, there's one big tip that I can give you, and that's to keep your lighting generally broad, large light sources with soft shadows. And that's going to make your job a lot easier when you're compositing these things together. So I'll explain that for a little bit. Basically, if you're using a large light source, like me right now, I've got basically like a kind of a neutral light on me. I don't have like rim lights on the sides of me and like a dark shadow on the side of my face and things like that. I blend into the scene fairly easily. There's just a giant broad light source on me. It makes it a lot easier when you're doing a composite because we're going to be photographing different pieces of the composite. So you have to match your lighting as well as you can to each of these different pieces of the composite. And if your light source is like big and broad, it makes it a lot easier to do in post. So instead of matching like, I've got a rim light over here and 2 rim lights over there and like a shadow here and like, a shadow coming down from my nose at this angle and all that sort of stuff, it makes it a lot easier to just say like he's got one big light coming from this side. Now if we want to photograph something and put it in here, we just put one big light over on that side too. So that makes it a lot easier if you guys are doing composites. Use large, broad lighting. So I'm going to talk about our lighting setup today. And a lot of what you guys are going to see, it looks a little bit complex, but a lot of what you guys are seeing is basically trying to achieve that like big, broad light source that I was just talking about. So we're going to start off right over here, if you guys don't mind. And this is just a couple of alien bees, and you guys don't need to use expensive equipment or anything like that. You can if you want to, if that's what is important to you. But these are alien bees. They're incredibly cheap. And basically, we've got 2 of these that are firing directly into what's called a V-flat. And basically, this is just, these lights are hitting this flat, which is just like a V of white material. And the light's hitting there, and it's firing back in this way. So it just creates like a big, broad light. Not only that, but that light is on axis. You can see my camera is right here. So the light is kind of coming from the same direction as the camera. So that's what we call like a fill light, because it's going to fill in all the hard shadows and things like that. Have you guys, anyone used like a V-flat or anything like this? Have you bounced like a light off a wall? Okay, same exact thing. Like if you've ever if you had a speed light on your camera and you put it off to the left and bounce it off a wall, it's the same thing. There wasn't a wall here. So that's the whole idea. It's like, oh, cool. It creates a wall for you right there. And it's really, really great to use one of these because it's cheap to use. You can buy this stuff at any like a craft store or something like that. It's just foam core that's been taped together. So think of this as like a softbox that's that big, which might cost several $100s. In this case, it might cost $20 or $30. You just fire some lights into it, and it'll shoot back this way, giving you a really big soft light. So this is going to fill in our shadows, making sure we don't have hard shadows and like the areas don't get too dark within our subject. So that's basically what that's for. The next guy we've got going on is, we'll just kind of switch right back over here. And this is a softbox that we've got firing against our back wall. And that's basically doing the exact same thing. So we've got a light coming from the front, which is going to fill in some shadows. And now we've got a light coming from the back, which is also going to light up this back wall a little bit and kind of project some of that light back onto our subject. So we're just kind of filling in shadows here. That's our main goal. And we're going to talk about why this light is set up in the way it is for now. Okay, the next light we're going to talk about is right over here. This is just off camera, and there are no gels or anything on these lights, guys. These are just like, daylight balanced lights. This is just going to fire at our subject in this way, which is going to give her a little bit of a highlight on her side. Maybe pretend like there was a window off to the right over here, and this window is going to bring in a little bit of light. So that's just going to help make it a little bit more interesting. So the next light we're using a lot of lights, but think of this as like a giant softbox. So, or if there was a window there, we could just use that as well. The next light we're using is this light here, and this is an Einstein with this is a long throw reflector on it. And basically this is shining directly onto our cereal bowl, and that's just going to give that a little bit more contrast. That's going to put like a little bit of shadow in there, much like what you see with the window light. It's actually kind of reproducing the window light here in the scene. And then this light here is basically, it's a soft box. It's called a strip box because it's a long, thin strip with a grid on it, and this is going to be firing directly at our subject's face. Just in case her face is a little bit too dark or it needs a little bit more definition, this is going to fire directly at her face to just kind of like brighten that up. So do you guys have any questions about the lighting? It's a little bit of a untraditional setup here. Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
So when you're designing this lighting, did you design it in Chicago, or when you got here, you looked at what you had and then you said, okay, here's what I'm trying to achieve, we'll need to do this?
That's a really good question. So when I had the sketch, I kind of did design some type of lighting. I knew that I wanted her to have some light coming from behind because that kind of says like early morning. When the sun is like not quite high in the sky, it shines through windows, and so you get like that nice backlit effect. So she's got a bowl of cereal. This is probably early in the morning. The second point that, which I'm really glad that you brought it up, is this is supposed to be like a commercial type of image. In other words, like we're not really going for like fine art here. We don't want like hard shadows. You know, I don't want someone like standing in the dark with like a silhouette of light where you can only see half their face. And, you know, like that's awesome. And I take photographs like that. But what I wanted to do with this image is to make it like bright and happy and cheery and almost like kind of like a commercial type of feel to it. So that's why we have all this fill light going on and all these lights, because we want to keep it like bright and airy. And I always like to say that if you want an image to be like bright and happy, like actually make it bright. Like don't have hard shadows in your image, like don't have a lot of dark areas in your image, like actually use light and make it bright. And that'll translate with the final. It'll make it like happy and bright and fun. So we're going to be photographing, and during our shoot today, if it turns out that like she's got too much shadow on her face or the shadows are too dark, what we're going to be doing is bringing up our fill light to make sure we take care of that. So this lighting diagram, I had a rough idea in Chicago of what we wanted. Yes.
Hey, before
Lorraine.
we move on with lighting, there are so many people in the chat rooms wondering if you can do a composite like this with natural light as well, or are you actually lighting every single set?
That's an awesome idea. A composite like this with natural light is actually perfect. That would be the easiest thing. If I wasn't absolutely in love with using this sort of stuff, I think it's fun. That's to me one of the fun types about photography. But natural light would be like the actually best way to do this. I'm going to talk about, I'll answer that question with like 2 different points. So natural light, we've got some really nice window lights coming in from this angle that are lighting our set fairly well. You can see it actually does look pretty good in my opinion. If we wanted to bring in a little bit of fill, we could put in like a white card here, like that V-flat, and that would bounce some of that light as the fill there. Now, if you're different composites, like let's say we wanted to put a person in the pool, well, we would just put the pool right here and it would be getting this same exact light that's coming in from those windows. So that's a perfect way to do it. Natural light is a great way to use for compositing because you don't really have to match it that much. It's like, okay, it's a big broad light source. Not only that, but natural light you can see, which makes it a lot easier. These strobes, like you guys have no idea what it's going to look like when all these strobes fire, right? And I don't either, so that's the fun part. So natural light is really great because you can actually see it. Now, there may be one downside to using natural light, and it's something that, depending on, let's say I'm shooting half of my composite in the morning and it takes about 2 hours. And by that time, the sun is kind of like clouds have come over the sky and my natural light is completely changed. Well, if I'm going to shoot my second part of the composite and it's like it's a little bit darker outside, especially because we're in Seattle, then my light on the second part of the composite has completely changed. So if I wanted to match that, I could then try to match the natural light, but that's just going to be something that you have a little less control over natural light sometimes. The second point is that when we talked earlier, we said we want to kind of figure out our aperture from this sketch. We want a lot of this to be in focus. So if you're not getting a ton of natural light, maybe you wouldn't be able to shoot at f13 or 14. Maybe you'd have to crank your ISO up to 400 if you wanted to do that. So that's kind of like something you might have to give on. Like if I want to shoot at ISO 100 because I'm shooting with a Canon 5D Mark II, and you could go up to like 200, 400, but above that, I think that there's a little bit too much grain, especially for like a commercial application. 100, I think, is where I want to be shooting. So with using all these external lights, I can crank up the power and make sure that I can shoot at 1/160 of a second, which is going to freeze any motion. I can shoot at f13 and I can shoot at ISO 100. So if I was using natural light, I would probably be shooting something like like a 50th of a second at maybe ISO 400 at 5.6. So that's just going to affect our depth of field a little bit, and if I'm able to freeze motion as much. But that's a really long question for a simple answer. That's a really long answer for a simple question. But the answer is yes, you can most definitely use natural lighting. And I've seen many, many composites that are done very well. And I want to answer one more last question. If the shot that you taken was done in natural lighting, let's say that you're doing a certain composite where you took a picture of someone outdoors, and then you wanted to take something else and make it look like it's outdoors. Let's say there's a person and they're standing in a field, okay? And you take a picture and there's the sunlight on him and it's natural and it's beautiful. And then you have like a toy rocket that's this big and you want to photograph it and make it look like it's actually like this big and have it next to them. I would recommend doing that in the same light. So if the original photograph was taken in natural light, take that toy rocket outside and just do the exact same thing, using the sunlight as your natural light. Don't take that back into your studio because you're going to miss out on a lot of things, like the fill light that the sky creates and things like that. So if your original photo that you're trying to match is with natural light. I would recommend any elements that you're trying to put into that also be taken with natural light as well. Cool, really good questions. Awesome. Cool, I hope I'm not talking too much.
We want you to talk
We
plenty.
want, all right, cool. That's perfect. So that's basically our whole goal with this shot, is to create like that type of commercial image. And all of our lights are basically coming together to do this. So the first thing that we're doing is kind of like going to figure out how this is actually going to look. Now, I was fortunate, I came in a little bit earlier today and actually like worked on this lighting for about 2 hours, just kind of like moving and tweaking things, mostly because I don't want these pictures to suck. It's like, you're on Creative Live, you should create a good image. So that's the whole idea. If you didn't have the time during the photo shoot, I would recommend taking like a pre-lighting day, which we do a lot in, like if you have actual, like a client or something like that, they want to make sure that when they get on set, you already pretty much know what things are going to be like. If you guys are just doing this for fun, then take your time and play around. But a lot of the time, you will take like either a day or the morning up to do a pre-light. So right now, what I want to do is just take a picture here with the camera, and then I think it's tethered, so I think we can just see what it looks like. Is that okay? What it's going to look like on screen? So I'm going to take a picture there. And you can kind of see everything that's going to come through. And then I'm going to explain some of these lights. And I can even turn some of these lights on or off. And you guys will be able to see the impact that they actually make with the final image there. You can see some of our images. We were using people from around the studio's test subjects earlier, which is really, really fun. You know, if like you're... If John is having a great time posing for this, then the final image is going to be really, really fun. So
There were requests to have John jump in the pool later, so we'll see if we can give him.
Perfect.
I didn't hear that one.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I can take another picture if you guys are, if you want me to. Sorry about on the tech department. I just kind of threw
Just
that one in there.
Just 1 second as we're getting the tethering all set up. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Are there any questions from the chat room or from you guys while everything gets set up?
I have a good one here from Dale R. Photo. He asks, when using complex lighting, do you keep a sketch of your setup, or do you vaguely remember where your lights are hitting so you know where to light your next elements?
That is a really, really good question. And the answer is yes. Oftentimes I will keep a sketch. If it's not the same day, I'll even take some photos. Probably not with this camera, but like with the behind the scenes camera, or even your iPhone. Just kind of take a step back and be like, okay, there was a light over there, there was a light over there, there was a light over there. So kind of keeping that in mind. The next thing which is interesting is you'll be able to actually see the final shot that this light created. So oftentimes you can kind of look at that and say like, okay, this is how we should light our composite. But that's a really important point, because when you are compositing images, the two most important things you can keep in mind, again, are your camera angles and your lighting. And if those are pretty close, you don't have to get these exact. If they're pretty close, your composite's going to be pretty believable. So we can see here with the image of, if you guys just want to pull up that image, John, or there we go. This is so cool. I can just say that and it happens up here. You guys have an amazing department. So here with our image of John, you can basically see like there's some light coming from the camera left, right? It's creating the shadow where the orange juice is. It's creating this shadow here. So we can actually see that light is coming from there. So with the cereal bowl, we want to make sure we match that. So although we're going to be photographing a giant, a giant pool, we're going to want to make sure that we're actually bringing light in from a similar angle there. We can see that the shadows really are not too dark here. The shadows are fairly light. So we want to make sure that our fill light is actually filling in some of those shadows as well. We can even,
Aaron, as you're gesturing, just because we might be on a shot of the camera or of the image itself, so they can't see your hand. Just
they can't see my hand.
Describe like what area you're talking about when you say there.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So as I mean under the orange juice glass, so you can see from the orange juice glass to the bowl of cereal, we can see like kind of a dark shadow that kind of like runs that line there. So that shadow is produced because we have a light source that's basically the opposite way. So you can follow a shadow, go the other way, and that's where your light is going to be. So we can see that for the cereal bowl, when it comes to compositing that, we're going to actually have to create a light on that side. Now here on John's, it's the camera right side, we can see there on the top of his shirt, and also here on his beard, we can see it's a little bit light. And that's going to show, that's the rim light. That's this softbox that we have right over here. This softbox is creating that rim light. So this softbox is creating that light that's kind of like on him as well. So when we do bring in our subject into the giant pool, we know we got to keep a couple things in mind. We want to keep like a relatively harsh light coming in from the camera left, which is going to simulate the harsh light that's creating that shadow on the orange juice. We want to make sure we have a little bit of a rim light, which is going to help like separate our subject out, maybe light their hair from the background. We want to make sure we have a fill light that's just making the shadows not very dark in the image. So those are like the key couple of things that we want to do. So you can figure that out from either a sketch of your images, or sorry, a sketch of your lighting, photographs of your lighting, or just kind of like looking at the sketch or the image afterwards and figuring out, okay, these are a couple key lights, and this is what we should bring in. Really good question.
Keep going.
Very cool. All right, we'll keep going. Is there any chance if I take a picture, if it can show back up here? Yes, all good to go on that. Right on. So I'm going to take another picture here. There we go. And here we have our Fruit Loopies. Am I still live? Giving the double thumbs up. I'll just explain what the picture looks like. It's amazing. Oh my God, the light on the cereal bowl is just magnificent. Who lit this image? Whoa. Where did they go to school to learn how to do this? These are all really good questions. I didn't go to school for photography. You don't have to. Well, I won't say that you don't have to. I think photography school is a good thing, but I didn't go to school for photography. So if there's anyone out there watching who wants to be a professional photographer, I'm not against going to, post, high school education for photography, but that's not what I did. And I know a couple of other people who were doing pretty well who didn't go to photography school either. So I just want to throw that in there. Some hope.
General question, well, it looks like we're still figuring that out.
Yeah.
TT313 is wondering how you go about determining which order to shoot the components of your composite.
That's also a really good question. So again, there are several types of compositing. In this, what we're going to be doing is element compositing. And generally what you want to do is you want to start off with the element that's either the largest or the hardest to change. And if you guys remember from our sketch, the biggest element, what makes up most of the picture, is the girl looking into the cereal bowl. Just the cereal bowl, which is going to be what we're going to be doing in the pool later, that's really kind of like just one small part of the frame. So you want to photograph the largest part of the frame, the thing you can't really change as much after the fact, and then you kind of match everything to that. So if you're doing a different type of compositing, let's say we were going to be photographing a person and then putting them on a different location, you would want to make sure you had the location first, and then you could match the camera lighting and the angle and everything to that location. So start off with like the biggest element of the photo, or the element that you can't really change, and then go to everything that kind of like comes in afterwards. That's a really good question. All right.
And it looks like we might be up and running here, so.
John, you're the man.
Here we go. Thank
Blow
you,
it
John
up.
Cornicello.
Okay. So this is what our frame looks like without a person in it. And it looks really good. I think it looks good anyway. It looks like, yeah, Fruit Loopies. We can see our shadows aren't too dark. Now I'm going to just do a couple things, and you guys can see kind of the impact these make, because it's one thing for me to just say like, oh yeah, that light's important, but it's another thing for you guys to actually see them. So I'm going to do it without the subject in there. I'm just going to turn these lights off, which this is our fill light, and then we'll be able to see that the background and everything is going to get a little bit darker, which doesn't have as much of a commercial application. Now keep in mind our subject isn't even in the frame, so if her face was in there, we're going to bring her in a minute, and her face would get even darker. And generally you don't want your subject to be, if they're the main thing in a photo, you don't want them to be completely in shadow. So I'm going to take another photo, and this is, again, without my fill lights turned on there in the background, and you should be able to see as it comes up that it's just a little bit darker there in the shadows. You guys see kind of like that change there? So it's on the background, you can see it pretty easily. I don't know if they can flip kind of back and forth between those. Oh, there we go. There's like a before and the after. So the background and everything's just a little bit darker. That would basically translate onto the face of our subject. So her face would be, again, in a bit more shadow. So not like the hugest change in the world, but we can see that is an important part of creating an image, is managing your fill light. All right, so with lights like this, does anyone have any other questions? Do you want me to turn any of these other lights on or off to see what they do? No. Okay, cool. We get fill light. Everyone's cool with fill light. All right, perfect. Well, I think we're ready to go ahead and bring in our amazing subject. Sarah, you ready? Awesome. Well, if you want to take a seat, what we're going to be doing is kind of just going through some tests. And we're going to be, I'm going to take some photos of you, and it's just going to be working with our lighting. So it's going to be like maybe 10 minutes long, and all you have to do is like sit there, and I'll tell you when we're going to start the real shoot. Is that okay? Perfect. Okay, I'm going to come right around you, and I'm just going to move this stepladder out of the way because we don't need this to be in the final photo. There we go. And if you want to scoot your chair in, perfect. And basically, you're going to be maybe scoot your chair in just a little bit more. You're going to be like right over top of this cereal bowl. So for a couple minutes here, all you need to do is just hang out there, and we're going to make sure that you look amazing. Does that sound okay? Perfect. All right, so we'll take a picture with you in the frame, and then basically we're going to talk about everything that we need to change with this. So you can kind of take a little bit of a break if you want. I'm going to talk about our shot here and some of the things that we need to change. So this is a lot of the time where we start off with a photo shoot, and this is, you know, oftentimes people don't, you don't usually talk through this. This is like, okay, the shot doesn't look good yet. How do we get it to look good? So here on Creative Live, which is great, I'm going to go through the entire process of like, the shot doesn't look that good. How do we get it to look good? Okay, so there are a couple things that I want to look at with the shot. You can see, thanks to our fill light here, that her face isn't really that dark. If with the fill light off, her face would go like pretty far into shadow, which we don't want. But it is a little bit underexposed. Now, another thing that we can see from the shot, if we want to switch to the image of just the screen, you can see a little bit of a highlight on her forehead, while the rest basically goes into shadow. And the reason is the main light in this image is kind of like that little bit of harder light that's casting that shadow there on the bottom of the orange juice. And there's something blocking the light from hitting our subject, right? Can you guys see what it is? It's a giant box of cereal, right? And that's making the light not hit our subject. So there's a couple of things we need to do. Either we bring in another light, or we have to have our subject kind of like scoot a little bit forward so that light makes sure we hit our subject and it actually like creates what we want. So that's what we're going to try to do. Would you mind scooting just a little bit forward, and then maybe even bringing your head? Just get comfortable. You're going to be sitting down for just a little bit. Perfect. Would you mind scooting forward, almost like bringing your head like straight over the cereal bowl?
I can't really see.
You can't reach? Can we get, what if it was a little bit higher? Would that be easier?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do we have like a phone book or a little pad?
It shows on an Apple box and we lower your head closer to the.
Okay. Well, we are seeing the back of the chair in the frame, so maybe, yeah, let's try a cushion. Why not? Yeah, bring it on in. Thank you, John. And if this doesn't work, we'll try it again. No worries.
I'll push the chair in.
We have plenty of time for you to hang out with Fruit Loopies. Is that better?
Yeah.
It looks like it's more comfortable. Perfect. And do you want to look like straight into the camera for me? Beautiful. Beautiful. Come forward just a little bit more if you can. Do we need to go a little bit higher with the chair?
I think that's good.
It's okay? All right, just a little bit more forward if we can. Beautiful. There we go. Okay, so let's look at the frame now, and then we'll kind of see what's going on here. You're doing great. So we can see now she's pulled forward a little bit, and we can start to see that light is hitting her face, which is exactly what we want. Her face is no longer in shadow, which is just not that interesting, and it's a little bit underexposed. So we can see there on her forehead as well as the nose, you can see a little bit of a shadow from the light from her nose and her cheek as well, which is bringing it forward. Now there's still a couple things that we want to keep in mind here. It still looks pretty good, but it's not great yet. And I can't really see the light that's going on here until maybe I turn on something like a modeling light. And a modeling light, in this case, is going to really help us figure out, okay, how do we get our subject to actually be in the light? So what I'm going to do is just, we can turn on the modeling light for this guy here. If you hit the function button, yep, a couple times till it goes to the model, and then hit the up arrow till it goes to full, if you want to. There we go, perfect. And now we can probably see, we can actually see the light coming from there and hitting our subject's face. So we can do a couple things at this point. If we want her to come even more forward, we can ask her to do that, but it sounds like that's a little uncomfortable, right? Okay, so what we're gonna do is, instead of bringing her more forward, yeah, we're just gonna move the cereal box back. Go ahead, John. There we go, and we can see that now the light is hitting her face, and that's the really great thing about using modeling light. Now, people had questions about using natural light, and if you were using natural light, well, you wouldn't have to turn on a modeling light to be able to tell, because you could just look at it. But now that we have the modeling light, we can see the light really does look great on her. So that's exactly what we need to do. So we're going to take a picture. Can you scoot forward? Just, yep. Perfect. And look right at the camera. Beautiful. Beautiful. So let's take a look at our shot now and see what we've got. Basically, the light on our subject should look quite a bit better. Maybe it's a little bit harsh right now because the cereal box was blocking a little bit of it before, so we can kind of take that exposure down. But we can see, as compared to, can we flip back a couple, where she was maybe even more if we flip back. Oh, look at this. Yeah, and the one even more before that, if we could go. There we go. So we've gone basically from our subject's, her face is almost completely in shadow, to now she's got a really nice highlight on her face. So we can see she's a little bit more well-defined. It looks like that light's kind of coming in from the side, and we just have a much nicer portrait. It's a little bit too bright because we're seeing that little bit of a hot spot on the bottom right, but you can definitely see how, compared to the top right where her face really isn't defined that much, to the bottom right where her face really is kind of coming out. So that's our goal. With this lighting, we want to make sure that everything kind of comes together to make our base shot, which is this, look really good. And after that, this shot is really set in place, then we're going to switch over and take all the different pictures of the composite. So we're just going to keep on going. If you don't mind, I'm just going to, we've brought the power down a little bit. Awesome. Yeah, maybe 2/10 of a stop or 1/5. You guys, for all you math people out there, let's go with 7/80 seconds of a stop. Perfect. All right, and if you could come just a little bit more forward. It's Sarah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Sarah, do you want to grab the spoon there?
Sure.
Perfect. Now, what we're going to be doing is, it sounds really funny, but did you hear earlier there's going to be a little man in that cereal bowl? Perfect. So what we're going to be doing is pretending like you're really excited about this. Like this is probably the best day of your life. And you're eating cereal and all of a sudden there's a little man in your cereal bowl and you're like, oh my God, what happened? Where did you come from? Things like that. So if you want to lift the, there we go, perfect. And actually let's dump the milk out and you can have it like almost like straight up, like kind of like you're just holding it like, oh my God. And there we go, perfect. Little bit of milk dripping on your hand is exactly what we want. We can leave it there, it looks good. So if you want to get your face like almost like right to the cereal bowl and then kind of look at the camera and just be like so excited, like, oh my gosh. There we go, perfect. And we're just going to change our, perfect. Do you want to maybe open your mouth a little bit to kind of get like surprise? Like, oh, there we go. Beautiful, beautiful. So here we're seeing a little bit more of what we want to do. And as we go, basically I'm going to change our exposure over and over again and change our composition. Could you get maybe a little bit closer to the bowl of cereal? Beautiful. And maybe have you look down into the bowl. Very, very nice. So John, let's bring down the power of this light just a little bit. So here we're starting to get what we actually want. And this is one of our components of the photo shoot. And Sarah, you're doing really good. This is one of our components of the photo shoot, which I want to talk about. It's actually written on the board right back here. So the next thing about making composites believable and making them good is having your subjects interact with each other, which is right over here. Now, keep in mind, there is no subject in this cereal bowl. There's nothing there, which makes Sarah's job a little bit harder. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to put something in that cereal bowl, and that's going to be like make pretend that's the little man. So I didn't actually tell anyone that we're going to do that. So we just have to like figure something out. There we go. Cool. A nice little ball of gaffer tape in our cereal. Please don't eat this cereal. There we go. So you can kind of pretend that's the little guy in your cereal. So if you want to kind of get close to him and be like, oh my God, what are you doing? There we go. And back up me with your eyes just a little bit. Awesome. You look really excited. It's perfect. Do you want to maybe dip a little bit of the milk with your spoon? And then, there we go. And then you can bring it up and actually just like let it kind of fall out of the spoon. Like you can spill it a little bit. There we go. Awesome. Let it spill a little bit more. Perfect. Like, what is happening here? Perfect, Sarah, you can take a quick break. We'll just take a look at these. So these are the kind of things that we want to do. Like she's actually interacting with her subject here. And another point we talked about earlier when using these strobes is being able to freeze motion. So if we can actually just zoom in on the very last shot that we got, there we go, perfect, where we actually see a little bit of the milk like coming off of the spoon. That creates a little bit of action in the shot. It kind of creates like this is happening now, as opposed to like someone's posing for a photograph. So like the milk spilling off the spoon. And do you guys like that detail? It's kind of cool, right? Did you see the milk spilling off your spoon? So I think we should even go for it more. I think you like, let's just go like wild with it, and not just yet, but we can have a lot of milk spilling off the spoon, and then it's gonna be like, oh my God, what's happening? I'm really excited about this. This is just a really fun day. So before we do that, and Sarah, you're doing really great, I'm just gonna talk a couple more things about our lighting, and I'm gonna just turn off a couple of these things, and we're gonna take a shot without a couple of these lights on, because I think it's important to see what these do. And the things that I want to talk about are the lights that are behind our subject right now. These are the rim lights, and these are what's basically going to be like the light that's coming in the middle of, or like the morning, you know, the morning light. So we're going to point out, so if we switch to this one, we won't be able to see me, which is okay. But her hand and her arm that's actually holding the spoon, you can see off to the right side there, that light that's kind of carved out on that side. You can see it also in her hair, which is separating her hair from that kind of like wood in the background, and you can see the light on the background itself. So all of that light is coming from this strip box here and the light that's right up here. So what I'm going to do is just turn these off. There we go. We're going to turn the power off on those, and we're going to be able to see what a difference that makes. So having that light, what it's going to do is it's going to separate out your subject from the background. So we've got a well-lit shot here, and we've also got it backlit. So there we go. We're just going to take a picture. Do you want to look right at me, Sarah? Beautiful. And now we're going to be able to see what a difference these lights in the background really do make. You'll be surprised. This image doesn't look that good, does it? It's like, wow, that's much crappier. Good job, Aaron. It looks flat. It looks boring. She's not really that well lit. And if we can kind of pull maybe a comparison from the two, there we go. We can see how much more, like it looks like maybe there's sunlight coming in from the background. This is the morning, maybe there's some windows and things like that. Now keep in mind, we're not shooting in an actual house here. We're in a studio. So like, if I wanted to put a window there, we'd have quite a bit of demolition to do. So instead, we're just kind of like duplicating that same idea with light. She also looks like a lot more front lit. And generally, if you want someone to look like they're, just a little bit more three-dimensional, you'll front light them, which is kind of like your fill, but you'll also backlight them. And that's going to help like carve them out and make them look a little bit more three-dimensional. So in this one, she almost looks like a two-dimensional like sketch, right? She almost looks like a drawing. And in the one on the left, she looks like she really is kind of like coming out of the frame at you. So that's the difference that our backlight makes. So we've saw the difference that our fill light makes, and now we're seeing the difference that our backlight makes. Does that help everyone out? It's kind of cool, right? Yeah. So how do we actually get there? Well, in taking our images, I might have started off with this and said, okay, she's not too underexposed, but she's not really that interesting at this point. No offense to you, it wasn't your fault. And at this point, we had Amanda as our stand-in anyway, so it's Amanda's fault. And so we needed to add some light here in the background just to make her like kind of stand out. So that's why we're going to turn these back on, and we're going to continue to shoot with those lights. And I read on the internet somewhere, it was like my favorite quote about how to use lighting. And they just said, when you're using lighting, think about light like a big splash of water. Like wherever, like if you were to dump a pitcher of water in somewhere, like where would that water hit? It would kind of like fill a room and then like bounce around and kind of like spill around everywhere, right? And light is kind of the same. Like if you hit one wall, it's gonna like start bouncing around the place. So that's why this light, although it's pointing at the back wall, it's hitting the back wall. But think about it like if it's a splash of water. It would hit there, and then it would kind of like come splash back this way, right? Light does the exact same thing. So it's hitting that back wall, and then it's going to come splash this way and light our subject up as well. So a really cool way you can kind of use indirect lighting to help like bring out features and things like that of your subject. So there we go. Cool stuff on lighting. All right, Sarah, you ready again?
Yeah.
Awesome. This time, let's go all for it. Scooch nice and forward for me if you can. There we go. And if you feel free to spill as much of this milk as you want. We got gallons of it, so if you want to just, there we go. And let's see some spillage. There we go. Let's do it again. And this time you can spill, actually, I'm just going to push this back just a little bit if you don't mind. There we go. This time you can spill some outside of the bowl too. You can be really messy with this. This is all the times your mom told you not to make a mess. This is like, say, hey mom, look at this. Making a mess is a good thing today. So that's exactly what we want to do. Perfect. You want to pick up some of these Fruit Loopies? There we go. And you can bring them up and let's spill them all out. Like, whoa! Very, very cool. All right, let's bring some of those images up. Sarah, you're doing great. So we can see here, hopefully as they come in, some of the more spilling shots that we've got. Oh, that was amazing. So we can see some of the drops in the air. If you want to go back one or two, there we go. We can see some of the drops like in the air as they're falling from the spoon. This one is actually coming in. So which brings up another point. Let's say that we hadn't planned this out, but let's say that in this final shot, we love the one where she's actually like spilling some of this into the milk. Well, that creates like another challenge in our composite, because if we could pull up the bottom left image, make that full screen if you don't mind. Perfect. So she's spilling milk, which I didn't really plan on that. That's just kind of one of the fun things of the photo shoot as it's happening. But you can see it's kind of creating some turbulence in our bowl of cereal, right? So we can totally just do that. Well, originally we planned on having the pool that we're going to be photographing later not, be relatively still. But if there's going to be some turbulence, well, we just recreate that on a slightly larger scale in the pool. So maybe you can just like stick your foot in it or whatever you want. But that's one of the really cool things about compositing is like you want to photograph again like the big part of the puzzle first and then those little parts, and you can see like, okay, maybe we didn't plan on turbulence in the concept, but if it's looking really cool and we like it, well, we're just going to add it after the fact. We're going to make sure that we put that in after the fact. And yeah, I think it's looking really, really good. So
one quick question from the chat room. Are you at all concerned about the shadow from the orange juice that's falling into the milk?
Falling into the milk. That's a really, really great, it's a great question. It's a great question. So when we started today off, I was here at like 7 a.m. We started off with lighting that was a lot more flat. I didn't have that light in there. The light was a lot more flat. It didn't have these shadows and things like that. And the light, it would have been a little bit easier for the composite, but I felt like the light just wasn't that interesting. So that's kind of like the balance that you have to play. It's like, is this light interesting? And in this case, I think having some side lighting is relatively interesting, but it does make a little bit more of a challenge with the composite. However, I think it's kind of a cool challenge because now what we can do is we can bring that same thing into our composite when we photograph the pool. So for instance, right now we're using this V-flat to kind of shine light into, right? But let's say when we're photographing the pool, if I need a big dark shadow in my pool, why don't we just close up that V-flat and use that to block the lighting that we're lighting our pool, and then we're actually going to recreate that shadow in the final pool that we're going to be creating too. So I'm not concerned about the shadow that's coming through the cereal. I just have to keep it in mind when I'm doing the compositing. I've got to recreate that shadow on a larger scale. That's a really, really good question. And ultimately, what I decided is that it was more interesting to have these shadows in the photograph, making the compositing job just a little bit harder, but the end shot is just going to be more interesting and it's going to be more believable, and we like these details. If that was just a pure white bowl of cereal, I just don't think it would really be as interesting. And actually, I'll just turn this light off and you guys can tell for yourself. Rather than me just talk about it. There we go. Sarah, you can just hang out just like you're doing. All right, so our light is off there. We don't have like a harsh shadow coming in from the camera left now, and we can just see it kind of looks flat, kind of looks boring. I could put a softbox in there and just kind of light it up, but without that nice shadow, it's just like, it's not as cool, right? It's not as dynamic. So that's why we've got that light in there, and there we go. Looking great. Cool, great questions. Let's keep going with it. Was that fun? All right, cool. Let's put this guy back in the middle, and you can look at him. There we go. I'm the soggy milk operator over here. And you can look at him if you want to, and just kind of have fun with that, again, with that spoon, and kind of bring it up. And if you can, perfect. You can even, let's say, instead of grabbing it like proper, let's say you grab it like this. So the spoon's kind of like coming out of your hand like that. There we go, perfect. Perfect. And if you want to come right over the bowl of cereal, like really close, beautiful. And kind of like look up at me as you're spilling. What's this guy doing in my cereal? And you can kind of like look down at him again. Wow, very, very cool. Can you get even closer? So maybe almost your chin is like almost on the bowl. Very cool. Beautiful. And then look right back up at me. It looks like, what is happening here? This is just really, really weird. Oh, some of these are amazing. Do you want to see, Sarah? Can you see on the big screen there? Very, very cool. So it totally looks like she's just having a bowl of Big K's Fruity Loopies in the morning, and then maybe there's going to be someone in the actual Fruity Loopies. So you're doing great. The other couple of things that I want to keep in mind at this point are, I'm pretty happy with how this is going to come together as a composite. Like, our job isn't going to be really that hard, and that's up for us to worry about a little bit later. But the things that I do want to come up, like, we're not going to change a whole lot of this shot. Like, what we are going to be doing is we're going to be putting a person inside of the cereal bowl. But is that alone going to make a bad shot better? Probably not. So at this point, I need to kind of forget that person in the cereal bowl, and I just need to focus on, like, is this a good photo? Like, is this going to be the basis of our good photo that's going to wind up as a composite? And these are a couple things we want to keep in mind. Like, do I like that jug in the background? Is that nice? Is our subject in focus? And you can see here we are shooting at 1/160th of a second. We're at f14 and at ISO 100. If you guys in the control room could zoom into our subject, if you could zoom into Sarah's eyes, and hopefully we can see if she's in focus. And to me, it looks like she's in focus. She doesn't look too dark. If we could scroll around to the background, so you can see like that jug or something like that, we can see like that's a little bit out of focus. So we're bringing our subject, like separating her out from the background there. Okay, perfect. Let's zoom out again. And composition, I think, looks pretty good. Our shadows are just a little bit dark, so if we wanted to brighten those up, we could do so by bringing the V-flat in just a little bit closer to our subject, or we can brighten them up in Photoshop. That's something that, if they're like a half stop too dark, you can brighten those things up in Photoshop. So in this case, that's something that I'm not really that concerned with. But the rest of it, like orange juice placement, we're showing enough of the photograph, but not too much. Let's just I'll zoom out here. There we go. Sarah, and do you want to just kind of like dip into it? Perfect. Look back up at me. Perfect. Great job. And we're going to take a look at that image here. So here we're zoomed out a little bit, and what we're going to see is not only do you see the actual softbox that's in the frame, you're getting a little bit of flare from it as well, but we can see it's too much, right? We're seeing too much of the image. She's way too small in the frame. And the other thing that we're missing is the cool detail in this photograph. The end image is going to be that person in the pool. That's the cool thing. So we want to fill up as much of the frame with that as we can, because if there was a person in that, and you saw this on the web, like we're looking at a large screen in here. For those of you guys viewing it at home, it's probably relatively small on your computer. But if you were viewing this at like 800 pixels wide, this person would make up like that big. And if you saw a thumbnail, you probably wouldn't even see the person at all. So kind of be thinking about those things as well when you're kind of composing the shot. Like, what's the cool element to this photo? Let's make sure it's big and it's in your face, and then you actually see it. If we can pull up like a before and the after with this shot and then maybe the one previous, there we go. We can see, like, if you saw a thumbnail of this, you could probably actually see the guy that's in the pool as opposed to the one on the right, which is just like, yeah, there's some weird stuff in the background and there's a kid kind of in there. So probably not something that anyone here would do. Like, why would you take an image that zoomed out? But it's just kind of like an important thing to think about. Like, make sure you're nice and close to what you actually want to be showing off about the image. So let's zoom it back in.
And just a quick question.
Yeah.
What camera and lens are you using? People always want to know, and
Good
what your general
question.
settings are.
Good question. Let me just zoom back in. There we go. So I'm using, this is a Canon 5D Mark II. This is a couple years old, and it's the only camera that I've used basically throughout the last couple of years. I think it's a really, really good camera. If I were to buy a new camera today, I would probably go with a Nikon D800 because I think it's an amazing camera, or a Canon 5D Mark III. Because I am already invested in a lot of Canon lenses, I would buy the Canon 5D Mark III if I was to buy one today for this type of thing. I'm using a 24 to 105 f4 IS lens, and this is a kit lens, guys. This came, I mean, it's kit, it's like still it's a nice lens, but it came with the camera when I first bought it. When the Canon 5D was first announced, it was pretty hard to get just the body only, so I bought it with this lens, and I still shoot with it. It's not a 2.8 lens, it's not the nicest, most expensive lens in the world, but we zoomed in way earlier and we could see, like, it's clear, especially like at f14, it's gonna be nice and sharp. The other thing about this lens, which I really like, it's actually like a semi-macro lens. If you look on the side, it actually says macro on the lens, which is like, you wouldn't think about this lens as being a macro lens. What that means is the focal distance is relatively short. So if I was this close with like say a 70 to 200, 2.8, I think the focal distance with that is like a meter. So I might not even be able to focus on my subject if I was using that lens. So I'm using this lens not only because it's wide enough to get what I want, but I can also zoom in to make sure that I'm nice and close and cropped on Sarah, just like we talked about, but also because it has the ability to focus on that relatively close to the lens. Now, a 70 to 200 2.8 would also be a really great lens to use here as well. Perfect, that's a really good question. And then the lights that we're using, all these lights are by Paul C. Buff. These ones in the background are the Einsteins, which are the newer lights, and I love them. They're really, really great. These background lights here, these are just the Alien Bees, and you know, for something like this, they're great. I'm traveling here from Chicago to Seattle, and I packed all this up in a giant Pelican case. So for travel, like, these things don't weigh anything at all. It's like the perfect way to do it. I put all 6 of these lights in one case with a couple foam padding, and they travel, they ship really easily. So I really recommend them. Plus, if one breaks, it's a couple $100s. They've got really good customer service at Paul C. Buff, so I love that company. I'm not endorsed by them at all. I really do like them. Really good questions. Cool, it looks like we've got about 15 more minutes, and I'd love to use this. Sarah, we're gonna take a couple more photos of you, and then we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we're gonna be doing basically the exact same thing, focusing more on like expression and things like that. So is that okay with you? All right, let's unsync your little guy here. So this is what you're gonna be looking at. Maybe over the break, we'll find something that floats that is not gaffer tape. Perfect. That looks really good. So this time, let's get like a big spoonful of the milk. Let me just take a test shot to make sure we're working. And come on nice and forward for me again. Perfect. A big spoonful, and go ahead and just like, let's go fast with this time. Let's go fast. You can like let it spill all out in one. There we go. And whenever you're ready. Awesome. Awesome. Let's do it again. I love to see how that was kind of like dripping down. Let's get really close, and I love it when maybe could you look it right into the camera for me? There we go, and let's just spill it all out. What? That was really good. Oh my gosh, if we get a shot that's better than that, I'm gonna be surprised. That was so good, Sarah. You gotta see, I think it's gonna come up on the screen. There we go, really, really cool. Oh, and a really cool ripple there. So the other thing about compositing that I love is, let's say we get the most amazing shot of milk coming out of the spoon, but in that shot she happened to be looking down, and we want the shot where she's looking up. Well, that's another type of compositing. That's what we're going to be calling our frame compositing, which we're going to be focusing more on tomorrow. But we can take one element, let's just, maybe let's side by side the top 2 on these, if you don't mind. There we go. Sorry, I'm being like a real pain on the technical department. Let's say I love her face on the one image on the right, but on the image on the left, I want that little bit of milk. Well, that's not something that I have to get all correct in camera, because using frame compositing, I can use just her face from the image on the right, and I can put that on the image on the left where she's got that spoon. So not only does it kind of help us out in creating like a special effect, like someone's actually like coming, gonna be in this milk, but it also allows us to be able to see like, okay, I love this part of this image, I love that part of this image, I love that one, and let's stick them all together and see what we got in the final. So you can take these little pieces that you love and put them all together without worrying to have to like get everything perfect in one shot, which as a photographer, to be honest, it makes your job a lot easier. This is something you really couldn't do with film. So you have to get every little thing right in one take, and I rarely do that. Usually I'll get one part of a person right in one frame. I say, okay, I love your body in this one. Let's focus on your head. And we'll kind of move their head around, and you can replace that after the fact. So It just makes your job a lot easier as a photographer, and it makes it a lot less stressful, to be honest. I mean, I'm here teaching live, and I'm not stressed out about the shot at all, because I know if I like that shot with the milk and a different face that we shot 15 minutes ago, well, I'll just put those two together, and we got a great final image. So it'll make your job a little less stressful. You won't be as worried on the photo shoot. And you focus on what's important, which is Sarah. And Sarah, I apologize because I'm not giving you enough attention, but I would always suggest, even though you guys are going to be doing a composite, you got a lot of things going in your mind here. We got this list behind us here. We've got to match our camera angle with the bowl of cereal. We've got to match our camera angle with the giant pool, which we're going to be photographing soon. We got our focal length. We've got our lighting from each of the shots. We've got to do a rough composite on the set. We've got our subjects interacting. All these things we got to keep our mind on. It's really easy to forget about what's really important in this final image. And in this final image, we want Sarah to look like she's super excited. We want a lot of like really nice emotion, and we want to make sure we interact with our subject. So that's why we have this list here, because I don't have to think about it right now. I can just kind of like cross these off as I go through. So normally, if I wasn't doing a live broadcasting where I'm teaching, instead of talking about all this and instead of worrying about all my lighting, I would be spending about 90% of the time just hanging out with Sarah, just taking some pictures and have a lot of fun. So we're at a little bit of a disadvantage because I can't do that as much. It probably helps that I'm explaining some things as we're going along, but I just wanted to let you know that when doing this, you got a lot of things to keep in mind, but the most important thing, I think, is this interaction. So are you ready? Let's do it one more time. Let's go crazy with it. Oh, you know what? In this time, let's put the spoon back in the cereal, and this time I want you to kind of like pull it out, so it's almost like it's spilling milk like as it's coming out. All right, ready? And come on forward and bring your face and look towards me. Perfect. And let's just pull it out whenever you're ready. Awesome. Let's do it again. Even more this time. Let's get like see if you can get Miguel wet over there, okay? Miguel's this guy in the white shirt. See if you can just flick it back in this way and see if you can get him wet. Ready? All right. 3, 2, 1. Let's go for it. Perfect. That's really, really nice. Let's do it one more time. I just want to make sure that I got it. All right, there we go. Come on forward. Come on forward and look directly into the camera. In 3, 2, 1, and go. Really, really cool. Beautiful. Sarah, you're doing a really good job. So we can see like all that really nice detail. And Sarah, you're just doing really, really good. So I think we've got maybe about 10 minutes left. And I'd love to reserve that time for question and answer things. After the break, we're going to come back and basically resume here. We'll get you all cleaned up and everything like that, Sarah, and start taking more pictures. So we're totally ready for question and answers if you guys are ready.
Fantastic. This has been a lot of fun. Do you have a question?
I do. I have a question lined up from Luis, who is joining in from Argentina. And earlier you were explaining about the camera angle and the focal length of this shot right here, but how do you match that camera position and angle focal length from the bowl and the picture and the pool in the picture? Because your camera is going to be a lot higher later, and how do you make sure that you're on the same angle? Are you taking notes or?
That's a really, really good question. We're actually going to be addressing that in kind of like a pretty good amount of detail in part number 2. We've got a little bit of mathematics that we're going to be going through. It's not hard, I promise. Everyone's going to get it. I've got a nice graph that I'm going to make you guys. But it is an important thing to think about, your camera focal length and distance and things like that. So I'm going to show you guys like a really easy way to kind of like calculate that out to make sure you're doing it right. The other thing is too, like if maybe you're, not as sure about your focal lengths, or you're new to this and you're like, should I be closer to the camera? Should I be farther than the camera? In section 2, what we're also going to be doing, we're going to bring either the laptop or the computer on set. So we're going to shoot tethered. And as we're setting up the camera angle for the pool, what we're going to be doing is taking pictures and doing a very rough composite, like while we're actually doing the photo shoot. And this is something that I will do during a photo shoot. So you can see, is this the right camera angle? So I can actually photograph the pool, I can bring it in, do like 2 seconds in Photoshop, see, okay, do I need to go higher? Do I need to go lower? Do I need to come in or out? And I'm going to teach you guys in section 2 how to know if you have to go higher or lower, because that's like, I don't know, higher or lower, what? It doesn't look right. But I'm going to teach you guys how to do that in section 2. So really good question.
That's great. Do we have any questions from anyone here in the audience, by the way?
Yeah.
So Just out of curiosity on the lighting, if I would have looked at something like this, I would have thought that maybe the front of the cereal box being in shadows might not have been a good thing. Why choose this lighting over maybe like, let's say like a cross lighting or like a clamshell lighting to light her from the front so that it lights everything evenly?
That's a really good question. There are a couple reasons why I chose this lighting. If we want to zoom in maybe on the very bottom left on this, so we can see it here, and then maybe we can flip back to me. That's a really good question. When I started today off, I had something that was a little bit more broad and really did focus on our subject. Working in Photoshop will give us a couple things, and you're totally right. That cereal box is too dark. It totally is too dark. The shadows in general just maybe are a little bit dark. Maybe over the break we'll pull in our fill light and brighten those shadows up. We talked about in Photoshop, if something's just a little bit too dark, it's not really that difficult to bring it up. If something's like black and you want to make it like in highlight, that's pretty hard. But if it were like a half stop too dark, that's something that I can bring up in Photoshop. The other reason is, as I was setting up the camera lighting, I saw the light that was kind of coming in through the windows here, and it just looked a lot more interesting than the original light that we had. So that's why I kind of changed it up. The next thing is, and this is also an interesting point, is this the box of cereal actually causes quite a bit of glare. So if I were to bring this around, I can actually just do it. Normally you don't want to move things around your set, like while you're actually shooting, because then, now I can't composite that area. Let's see if this picks it up here. That's not really showing up, but at certain angles, the reflectivity of that Fruit Loops box is going to cause a lot. You can see it kind of like on the left there. It's kind of causing a little bit more glare. In this case, it's not really that bad. Let me try bringing it that way. It's kind of hard to, I can't see the lighting, obviously, because we're using strobes in this case. But at certain angles, well, kind of can see it. Of course, when I'm trying to make a point, you can't see it at all. We've gotten rid of glare, everybody. This is a glare-free studio. But at some points, it was reflecting, so I couldn't really see the design very well, and it was almost only showing as glare. So that's kind of like why I rotated that way. There's another reason, which is very interesting, which I had to worry about today, which I never have to worry about either. I started off this whole photo shoot when we were doing our test lighting. There was actually a big octabox right here, which what you were just saying, like, why didn't you just put a big light off to the camera right, which would light your subject? And I totally did start off the day like that. That created two interesting problems. One, none of you guys would have been able to see our subject. So that's something you don't have to worry about on a normal photo shoot. The cameras wouldn't have been able to see Sarah because there would have been a giant black box right here. So it would have made this section of the tutorial a lot worse because you wouldn't actually be able to see what's going on, the folks at home and you in the audience. So that's one thing that we kept in mind. The other thing is having a light source right here. It just made it so broad, it was kind of like not really that interesting. It was almost like what the light you would expect to see in a lit portrait rather than something that looked a little bit more environmental. Like if someone's in their kitchen, they got light coming from this way, they got light coming from that way. They don't have like the perfect beauty dish with the highlight in their eyes and like the rim and things like that. So it was also an effort to make it look more like, not lighting that was designed to look like a portrait. But that's a really good question. A lot of the reason, because there would have been a softbox here that was this big. Really good question.
All right, another question coming in is from Sam Cox in Loveland, Colorado. And he asks, since compositing depends so much on consistent lighting, is it difficult to combine images from different photographers or different sessions? Are there ways to build a library of composite shots for which lighting is not a major problem?
There's also a question about whether you ever use stock photography in your composites.
Yeah.
Okay, those are both really good questions. So as I mentioned earlier in the day, there are multiple different types of compositing, and as far as I know, they don't have a name. We're calling this type of compositing element compositing because we're photographing all of the elements together, and then we're going to put them back together later. Tomorrow, we're going to be going over a type of composite photography called frame compositing. And again, those two names, the element and frame, I totally made those up this morning. Like, don't look them up, they don't exist, but I think they should be called that. So that's what we're going to call them today. Now, things like bringing in stock images, that's a third type of compositing because that you know what? That would be a really great time for compositing 102 because a couple of things. It's a lot harder to do. When you're bringing in stock images where you don't have control, and you have to match everything else to this image that you didn't even take, it's a lot harder to do. You weren't on set. You didn't know what the lighting looked like. You don't know what camera they used, what angles they used. You know, you might not have access to the same software or the same camera. It could be like they shot with a medium format and all you're shooting with is a crop sensor. So using stock images and things like that, you don't have the control that you do in this type of photography. So it's a lot harder. Is it possible? Totally. But it's a lot more on the Photoshop heavy side of it. So that would be really good chance for compositing 102. If you were the person who took all the images, like they said keep a library of things you can composite together, a great way to do that is to just make the lighting consistent. Lighting is a huge part of it. So if you were planning on compositing many different images together, do simple lighting if you can, and try to light them all. Like maybe everything that's going to be in the composite has a big light coming in from the camera right, and that would be a great way to composite them all together. Because we're doing element photography and I have control over every single one of these pieces. We're not taking in any stock images today. We're not doing anything like that. If something doesn't look right in the frame, instead of trying to manipulate it in Photoshop to make it look right, what we're actually doing is making our lighting match it in our camera angles and things like that. So we have complete control today and tomorrow over everything that we're doing with our images, and that's why these two types of compositing that we do are the easier types. And for someone who's starting out with compositing, I would really recommend that they start out with these types of composites, and then once you're really confident with these types of composites, then you can move on to the more advanced compositing methods. Really good question.
Fantastic. All right, I think we are about ready to take that 15-minute break. So why don't you tell us what we're going to do when we come back?
Right on. Well, when we come back, Sarah's you're gonna have to take a break. We're gonna clean the table up. We're gonna take a couple different shots, again, because we talked about being able to bring in certain elements. So I want some shots with no cereal in the cereal bowl. I want some shots with a lot of cereal in the cereal bowl. Maybe some shots where she's got cereal actually in her spoon. We've got some, Sarah, you did really good. You did a really good job. And some of your facial expressions are priceless. They're so perfect. And so we're going to just kind of photograph those. I think we've got the facial expression that we love. I think it came out great. But like as a just in case, I always like to throw in at the end of my shoots working with people, I like to shoot in like a wacky time. So we're going to build in like 10 minutes and I'm just going to say like, Sarah, do whatever you want. That won't be right now, it'll be soon. But sometimes that like wacky time when models I say, look, we got the shot. You did it, everything is good, now we're gonna do a little wacky time. That's sometimes when you get the gold. You get the gold and people are just like doing crazy stuff. So we're gonna be doing that as well, and then we're gonna be transitioning and talking about how we're actually gonna be photographing the pool before we get to the pool.
Fantastic. So we will be back in 15 minutes with a wacky time with Erin Nace. We just want to give a big congratulations to Sarah. You are doing an amazing job. Everyone online is loving it. So nicely done.